Welcome everyone. This is we're gonna forego our usual slides, intro slides today. If you are used to coming and joining us for our the Thursday webinar series here at Crow Canyon Archaeological Center. Today, Crow Canyon is hosting the Four Corners Lecture Series. The Hisatsinom Chapter of the Colorado Archaeological Society is sponsoring this lecture today, which I will introduce in just a moment. As we always do, though, I'd like to start out with our land acknowledgement at Crow Canyon, that we acknowledge the Pueblo, Ute, Paiute, Dene, and Jicarilla Apache people on whose traditional homelands our campus sits and where we work and live. Our mission-related work would not be possible without Indigenous people in the past, present, and future. And at Crow Canyon, we respectfully recognize and honor ancestral and descendant Indigenous communities for their contributions to all of humankind. We are grateful to all Indigenous people, and we support the preservation and protection of cultural traditions, ancestral connections, and sacred lands, which is really our mission in a nutshell, is to empower present and future generations by making the human past accessible and relevant through archaeological research, experiential education, and American Indian knowledge. Please do check us out on our website if you haven't already at crowcanyon.org. And thank you to everyone who made generous donations when they signed up for this webinar and other webinars. This is an entirely free webinar series, and we are just really, really, really grateful for everyone who supports us. Thank you so much. If you have any trouble with Zoom, go ahead and head over to Facebook. We will be live streaming there. If you have questions, go ahead and type them in the Q&A if you can, instead of the chat. People get to chatting in the chat and sometimes we miss the questions. And you don't have to wait till the end. You can go ahead and pop your questions in the Q&A at any time, and we will get to them at the end. So if you're afraid, like me, of forgetting your question partway through, then please go ahead and do that. And you can also see this on YouTube after the fact, if you'd like to go back and watch it again at our crowcanyon.org/YouTube channel. And you can see a lot of our other webinars there too. Coming up in the next couple of weeks, next week we have another lecture from the Four Corners Lecture Series, The Geology of Canyons of the Ancients National Monument with Laura Hartman. And then the week after that, September 29th, we have updates from the Mesa, the Farview Archaeological Project with our very own Donna Glowacki, a friend and associate of Crow Canyon. So without further ado, I would like to go ahead and introduce our lecturer and our speaker today. I'm sure that many of you who are signed up already know Dr. Bruce Bradley, who is an emeritus professor at the University of Exeter, a research associate at the Smithsonian and the Indian Institute of Advanced Studies, is certified to teach in several South American universities. He received his bachelor's and master's degree in anthropology and geology at the University of Arizona, also my alma mater and many of ours here at Crow Canyon, and received his PhD in archaeology from the University of Cambridge. A very world-weary archaeologist, in addition to studying the North American Southwest and the Great Plains, Dr. Bradley has, his research has included the Upper Paleolithic of Russia and France, horse domestication in Central Asia, but his active areas of research involve the early peopling of the Americas and, as he will be telling us about today, prehistoric Pueblo archaeology. We are so grateful to you, Bruce, for coming and giving this lecture today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Liz.
I will turn it over to you.
All right. Well, it's great to be here. I really prefer a live audience, of course, because I like to interact, but we'll see how this goes and make it work. So I'm going to be talking about the Wallace Great House site. Been working on this research on this site since 1969, which makes it over a half a century now. And during that time, ideas about it, what we understand about it has changed rather incredibly, and no more so than in the last 5 or 6 years of work since I retired and came back. So Cindy and I have been working on this research, as I said, for over 50 years. So what I'm going to focus on today is pretty much what we've done in the last several years, last 4 or 5 years, as we had changed our focus of research at that point to investigate different topics than we had in the past. And for that, we chose a very specific area of the site to excavate for very specific reasons. We've only excavated about a little less than 40% of the site, and we don't expect to excavate a lot more in the future. You can see this aerial view right now. This is what it looked like at the end of last year and the primary areas that we're excavating. So we'll take a quick look. For you to understand what's going on in the last few years, you have to understand what went on in the previous 50 years or so. This is a plan map of the Great House as we now know it. And you can see there's 5 sort of major construction episodes that we're working with. So it makes it very complex. And particularly because everything was built on and around the initial construction. And this is what makes it very interesting for up here. Now we now know, and everybody pretty much accepts, that this is a Chaco Great House outlier. So it's outside of Chaco Canyon, but it's affiliated and probably built by the people that were doing the things in Chaco as well. So I'm going to go through the sequence as we understand it, because it's really important that when we get to the end, when we start talking about our interpretations. So I'm going to focus on architecture, just a few artifacts and a few other things are going to pop up. But basically, we're really looking at the architecture and what that's telling us about what was going on here, and especially what was going on here after the demise of Chaco, after it was gone, at least as archaeologically no longer visible, really. And people came back and reused this great house in a very interesting way. And this is where it's really piqued our interest and our direction of our research. So the very beginning, we have about AD 1040 to 1045, we have the construction of a great house. Now, this is, as far as I know, unique to Colorado at this point in time. And you can see on the plan map at the top here, we had a row of 3 rooms at the back, and then 2 rooms on the side, on the west side, and then another room down below the middle room up on the top. But we haven't excavated those 2 rooms yet because they're underneath the kiva that we're excavating. So we'll get to them eventually. But you can see that this is 3 stories in the back row of rooms and 2 stories in the side row of rooms. This is a significant great house built evidently as a unit between 1040 and 1045 AD. We expect also that in front of this, there will be more single-story rooms, but we haven't got direct evidence of them yet. At this time period is what we call sort of early middle Pueblo II, Mancos phase. So our pottery is basically standard pottery. We get Mancos black on white and the Mancos corrugated. But we get a lot of redware from Utah at this time. And we also have non-local pottery that's coming in from all over the northern Southwest and even further. We have 1 or 2 pieces from central New Mexico, a couple from Zuni, a couple from the Hopi area. So this is really already going along as functioning as a great house. So this is what the early architecture looks like. The masonry is single stone wide. And you can see the cross section on the right here, a schematic of that. We call it phase 1. And you can see the top of a wall on the left. The faces of these walls is just unbelievably fine. You can see how fine the work is here. And you can also see it on this upper right bit of masonry. You can see it basically has a veneer of mud and very, very fine little stones. It's almost a mosaic-like look. When this outside surface washes off, this is what the inside looks like. This is what behind the surfacing looks like. So it's a lot of mud. And it's the other thing that's really important about this, besides being multiple stories, it's built on footings. In other words, they dug trenches, laid footers, and then built the walls on top of those. And this is something, again, as far as I know, is unique to Wallace in this area at this time period. And also, as they went up from story to story, the walls taper. So they get thinner as they go up. So the slabs are shaped so that the width of the wall, and they start with wide slabs and they end up with narrower slabs at the top. So this is clearly all a planned, organized process. So then we have the addition of some rooms in the front of what we had at the 3-story rooms at the back, and then we had the one added to the outside upper left northwest corner, and at least 2 to the southeast side here, and we expect more in the middle, but again, they're underneath the kiva that we're working on. These are very tall rooms and big rooms. They're not typical for habitation sites. What I'm showing on the right here are some artifacts that represent special things. Again, we're still basically in Mancus black and white local pottery, Mancus corrugated. That hasn't changed much, but we're getting a fair amount of Chaco black and white, Chaco McElmo black on white, and you can see this really nice Tucson black on red bowl. These are coming from, quite distance, but the Chaco connection is very, very clear. Down below that, you can see an inset of a couple bifurcated basket effigies. These are actually from Chaco Canyon, not from Wallace Ruin, but we have representations of these at Wallace Ruin in the form of the ends of ladle handles. And you can see here's the end of a ladle, 2 ladle handles that have these little bifurcated basket forms on them. And here's another one up here. These are very specific to Chaco generally, but we're getting them at Wallace. And I understand they're also finding these across the road at Haney, which is really interesting. We get a fair amount of turquoise, a lot of ornaments. Again, a lot of exotic stuff. There's even a one bone of a thick-billed parrot. We don't have any macaw so far, but who knows? So anyhow, this it's still a great house. It's basically the same great house. It's just added onto. So then we move, and this is what the masonry looks like. That's one other thing that we've done in the last few years by excavating these early rooms, is we found another masonry style. It's very much like type 1 or phase 1, as we call it, but it's really different in another way. As you can see, the cross section here is schematic of a cross section. The stones still go the whole width of the wall, but in between is a layer of mortar that has stone in it, but little stones, and usually just on the outside face. But so we no longer have stone on stone with thick mortar in between. We've got stone on stone, and in other words, a layer of stone, a layer of mortar, a layer of stone, a layer of mortar. It's very different. It's like the banded masonry that we see down in Chaco Canyon. It's not the same, but it's very similar. You can see some of the close-ups of some of the walls here. On the lower left is the outside face of a phase 1 wall, and the inside face in the middle of phase 2 wall. And you can see in the upper image here, you can see the break between the upper story and the lower story. And I had taken the mortar, not the mortar, the rendering, the mud rendering off the face of the wall above this. And this is what it looked like before down below. And when you look really closely, the preservation is so good, you can see the fingerprints in the rendering, mud rendering. So we're getting basically the same suite of artifacts that we saw in our phase 1 rooms. And remember, well, understand that most of these artifacts that we're finding in the fill of the rooms. So they represent something after the room is no longer being used. And this is a different case. This is a room that we're just finished excavating actually yesterday. And I had a little bit left over that I had to do. And this room is 2-story room. It's if there's a 1-story in front of it, that makes it in the middle. And then there's a 3-story room behind it. But this is a fairly classic example of what we considered a habitation room. It's got a nice fire pit in the middle. Had a really nice masonry corner bin, a metate bin down here, a grinding bin. So it has all the features of a habitation room. And interestingly, it has 2 doorways out the south wall. In fact, if we go back, whoops, there we go. You can see the 2 doorways in the lower right here. Now, it's very unlikely that there's two doorways going into one more room. So I'm expecting south of this to have a dividing wall for the earlier, not the earlier rooms, but the rooms on the south, the single story rooms. I expect these will go one door into one room and one into another. So when I gave you the plan map here, that's, you can see it here, how I'm projecting this is going to be the case. Now, as I've indicated several times, the problem is these are underneath later things. Now we're finishing the later things, so hopefully we'll get to these early ones and test this out. Oh yeah, and this room was really interesting in the sense that it had, down in this southwestern corner here, it had quite a group of artifacts right on the floor, and there were 6 of what we call chamahillas. Chamahillas can be interpreted in any number of ways. Probably originally functional tools. In Basket Maker 3, we find some things like this that look like they were hafted to the end of a digging stick. They would work for that, but only in soils that have no stone in them. Okay. The other thing is, if you look at this group, it's about as diverse as you can get and still be called chamahillas in terms of the stone sources and the forms. To me, it almost looks like a traveling salesman's kit. And that's not really an interpretation, but that's sort of what it looks like. It looks like, oh, you go and say, well, I want one of this form, but I want it made out of this material. But that's, I'm just being a little flippant here, but it's a very curious thing. The other thing is chamahillas, as you go through time, they become more and more associated with ritual contexts. So don't know what this really represents. Okay, so this is what the architecture looks like. The masonry is completely different now. It's 2 stones wide, and this is what we call double tied. So one side of the stone is facing the wall, and then it goes into the middle, and the other wall does exactly the same, and then they overlap in the middle. This gives, and the walls are a lot wider. All of the rooms at this time period that we've excavated were 2 stories tall. So this is our phase 3. And the stone is different too. They've now chosen a completely different source of stone than they had in the previous great house. And it's a very special stone. It's very hard. It breaks in these beautiful brick-like forms. And we know that the closest possible source is about 3/4 of a mile to the south in a exposure in the Mancus Shale. It's actually a Mancus sandstone, and it's a stringer. And as far as I know, geologically, looking at geological maps and talking to geologists, it's the only exposure in southwestern Colorado of this stone. And it happens to be the same geological formation of the hard sandstone above Pueblo Bonito and Chaco Canyon. We don't think that this is an accident that they chose this stone for this great house. And you can see what they've done here is, here's the early great house. You can see it here in sort of pink. And the dark gray is what we've excavated, and we know those walls are there, and we know those doorways and hatchways were there. So you can see that they built this big U-shaped structure around the original great house. But once again, focus your attention on the original great house is on the west half of the phase 3 final great house. And that will become more and more significant as I continue talking about these things. And here's a reconstruction. A fellow by the name Pete Peterson did the original reconstruction, and I've cannibalized it and reused it over and over and over again, because every time we dig, I have to change the details of the great house. But this is approximately what we think it might have looked like in about 1125. The central 3-story section here would have still been the original early great house. And as far as we can tell, it was still in functioning at this time. Our pottery now is going from Mancus black on white, and we're getting the inclusion of McElmo black on white. And I can't see there I go. Okay. And so Mancus black on white, Mancus black on white. And we're, like most sites at this time period, we're getting odd little vessels like this bird-shaped vessel with a T-shaped doorway. And the rest of the artifacts are fairly typical, except that I must say that it's kind of strange. Most of these artifacts, as I said, are coming from the fills of room. They're not on floors, they're not on living surfaces. And we get huge numbers, both of bone tools and projectile points, arrowheads, that are absolutely intact, complete. You could use them today. It's not like domestic midden where things get used up and tossed. There's deposits in these rooms that really do look like they're some kind of a ritual deposit. And it's in most of the rooms. Okay, here's some more examples of phase 3. This is a very special architectural feature that we ran across a couple years ago. It's on the southwest corner of the western elevated kiva, which is the focus of our attention now. And you can see it here. And it's a purpose-built stairway. And this stairway was built as part of the construction of this whole southwest corner unit, because it's all tied together. So what's really interesting, I know of only one other stairway that has the same basic configuration, and that's at Pueblo Alto and Chaco Canyon. None at Pueblo Bonito, none at Chetrachetl, none at the other sites that I know of. But this one was totally integrated with the construction of this Western kiva. What's really interesting is the access to this. You could either get to it down the stairs from the roof level of this kiva, or you can enter this room suite here. On the ground story, there's a T-shaped doorway coming from the plaza and a T-shaped doorway coming in from the south. And to come in from that way to get to the stairway, you have to go through the room, through the doorway, or into the room and up through the hatchway, and then across that room, the second story room over here. And you could get into, this is the lower story. And so when you get to the second story, you have to go through this doorway and this doorway into this room and through this T-shaped doorway, which is a second story T-shaped doorway, into the stairwell and then up the stairs. It's a very curious thing. So basically what I'm trying to get at is this whole thing is highly integrated in terms of what was going on. One of the things that we found to be extremely interesting, and it was also found to be very interesting with some of our Pueblo colleagues, is that in the fill of this stairwell, which was filled during phase 3, at least before the Great House was left with nobody using it for a while, it was intentionally filled. And in the fill of that, right about the level of the doorway, the T-shaped doorway, was a very big cluster of bare paw bones. Now, the bare paw bones were found all through the fill at about that level, but we did have these clusters. And we have a minimum of 5 paws because we have 26 claws. Well, there's 5 on each foot, so that's got to be 2 bears that are represented here. And only the paw bones. There's no other leg bones or ribs or anything else. This is a very special thing. I can't really talk about details about what it might mean because that's something for other people who have the traditions to think about. So just say that this is probably very significant in relation to this Western elevated kiva. And then sometime after phase 3A, we get the addition of this little area over here. And we have a kiva, we've tested it, we haven't excavated it. We're confident that there's a kiva here and then a line of 3 rooms, which we have excavated. This again has pottery that's basically the same as 3A, phase 3A. We're guessing it dates at the late time of 3A, which 1125, 1135, we don't have a direct date, but the masonry is very different. It's not using that really nice thin Mancus sandstone anymore. They're using bigger, you can see here, bigger blocks. They're not really surfaced like pecking, but they're pretty well shaped, but they're all different stone sources. And so, again, we're getting the McElmo, late Mancus and McElmo pottery in here. this room right here, which is the south, just the ones just south of the kiva, had a very interesting, whoops, that skipped something. Let's go back. There it is. A very interesting assemblage of things above and on the floor. Here's some of, just selected some of the artifacts from here. Again, this doesn't look like, it looks like the room may have been used originally, lived in. There's a nice corner fire pit here. But after that, the artifacts that are in there are clearly later, and they've been intentionally put in there. And I just pulled out the ones that we think represent ritual activity. And so we have a sandal-shaped, what we call a tablet here. And you can just see it in regular light here. But then when I change the intensity, you can actually see a residue of some kind of mark here. It's probably organic. It might be grease. We don't know what it is exactly. I have some ideas, but again, not something I can really talk about in detail. Then we have this set of axes, all of which are perfectly intact. 2 chamahillas made out of that really fine brushy basin material. Again, are these utilitarian? No, maybe, but they're also associated with this effigy vessel. Now, this effigy vessel is one of the things that in Cindy's work, and she's done most of the work on what we were ending up to be using for interpretation at this time. And she really investigated the issue of effigy vessels. And what comes out is that it looks like the effigy vessels that we see in the northern Southwest are representations of individuals. They're not generic, here's a man, here's a woman. They actually represent an individual. And that argument is based on the adornments, the necklaces, the pendants, the face tattoos or painting. And you can see the little epaulette on the shoulders. You can see the blanket and the hairdo in the back. If these are truly representations of individuals, this could be a very good example of ancestor veneration. And this is one of the things that we're really looking at in relation to the ritual activities going on here. Now, this is in a phase 3B room, but all of this material comes from our next use of the site. And that's this use. Okay, so this is what we call phase 4. And you notice it's 1180, that's the earliest date. And that's basically based on the fact that we get a lot of Mesa Verde black and white pottery, which starts around 1180, although we can't find the source that actually demonstrates that. But anyhow, let's assume that everybody's right and it starts about 1180. So the reuse of this site, and I'm saying reuse because it looks like nobody was at this site from about 1140 to the minimum of 1180, and quite possibly even a bit later. Now, I've in the past interpreted the reuse of this site as something that relates to what was going on here in the mid 1200s. And it has to do with the hypothesis of a cultural revitalization movement that I published on in an article, which is trying to understand what was going on when people were taking this major shift off the fields and moving into the canyons and the cliffs, building sites like San Canyon Pueblo, which I did the excavations on. And there was a major shift in land use at this time. And when we found this at Wallace Ruin, we found these things going on at this basic time period. I connected it with this concept of a revitalization movement, starting at San Canyon Pueblo about 1245, plus or minus a month or two. But at Wallace Ruin, we later found out that the activities that were starting here based on dating were in the early 1200s, before what I had hypothesized as the beginning of a revitalization movement. And what we're seeing is a very specific mortuary pattern, where these rooms that you can see here in the turquoise, this is representing a mausoleum, where people were brought to the site. Nobody was evidently living at the site, and Cindy's work indicates that the closest habitation that we know of is 15 miles away. So they were coming to the site from other places and putting people here. Now, the other thing about this, and I'm focusing not on that because Cindy has already done a huge amount of work on that. Her dissertation is all about this, and that's available. Anybody that wants it, just get hold of us and we can get you the dissertation, a copy of the dissertation. But I'm focusing on the architecture. The architecture here at this time period is very interesting. What we see is a construction of 4 little kivas and 1 room. And so far, that's it. There's a reuse of the second story of this corner room here. And then there's evidence of use of these rooms, but not for habitation, but for depositing, again, what I think are ritual middens. And those are all the ones in light green. So all of these earlier rooms were being reused during this time period, either as a mausoleum or as ritual deposit areas. And these kivas don't have anything in them that we found that would indicate that they were habitation structures either. So what are these kivas? What's going on here? Well, you can see on the left here, a Mesa Verde, classic Mesa Verde phase, keyhole shaped kiva. It's got all the features, the pilasters, the tall pilasters, etc. This bowl that you see on the right was on the floor of that kiva. And when I was excavating, it was partly collapsed because the rooms below it had collapsed. But as I was excavating, it seemed really odd to me because if you look, you can see it's not actually using this other wall over here, and it's moved over to the east, to the right. And to build this kiva, they had to remove a great big earlier enclosing wall for this Chaco kiva. So it's actually intruding into this Chaco kiva here. Now, these 2 kivas on the north side are similar, but they're built into pre-existing phase 1 rooms. And their floor level, the kiva floor level, was at the 2nd story floor level of the 3rd story room. And to build them, they knocked out the south walls, built in these curved walls, added some corners to sort of round it out. And then the ventilator shafts come up inside and adjacent to the enclosing wall for this Chaco kiva. Again, we don't think this is coincidence. And finally, what we have is on the east side, this is where we really focused our energy the last 5 or several years, is in the central area here to see if this pattern continued, and it did. What we have here is another kiva that was built in here on top of one of these early rooms and overlapping actually the early room, moving into another, and they took out the phase 3 wall and put in a phase 4 wall, a massive wall. You can't tell it from this map, but a massive wall, and then built a rectangular kiva. Now, rectangular kivas are not very common in this area. We do see them occasionally, and a lot more to the south and down the Hopi area, we see rectangular kivas. We excavated a couple rectangular kivas and tested a couple others at San Canyon Pueblo, and all of them dated post 1270. We had good dating on them. We don't have good dating on this one, unfortunately. We don't have any of these structures are directly dated because none of them were burned. So this rectangular kiva is really interesting. It's special. That any of these other 3 kivas could be any time during 1180 to 1250, but this kiva, I'm fairly confident, is post 1270, which is right near the end. So what's that one about? What's going on there? Well, it had a very special feature in it, and I'll get to that in a minute. Okay, the things that are associated with the reuse of the structures, some of these you've seen already. We get a lot of what I call paho handles. In the literature, these are usually called tinklers, and they're rabbit tibias that have had the end reamed out. You can't see it, but the end has been reamed out and a little hole drilled in the side. And the idea was that they were tied to the fringes of shirts, and they clicked together when people were dancing. Well, at San Canyon Pueblo, I found one of these on the bench of a burnt kiva, 501, and it still had in it, I don't know where my cursor keeps disappearing, it still had in it a burnt, charred remnant of a feather quill that had been wrapped around with cordage. The cordage had been pulled down. It had pulled the quill down into the center of this and then pulled out through this hole and a knot tied there to hold the thing in. So I'm suggesting that these were actually pajos, prayer feather handles. We've got two of what people have called plume holders. These are very, very interesting items. Mary Sullivan has written a dissertation on this, looking at sources and trying to figure out if they were locally made or made all in Chaco Canyon. They've only been found at Pueblo Bonito, Chimney Rock Great House, and Wallace Great House. And they seem to be made with local clays and local materials, except this one on the right at Wallace is actually the only example I know of a modeled plaster of Paris item from ancestral Puebloan site or in the Southwest at all. So it's made out of plaster of Paris. Curious. Chamahillas, you see the effigy vessel again. In the fill of some of these rooms where I think they're ritual middens, we get what I think are dismantled altars. In this case, it would have been a clay altar. We got 4 chunks of clay like this that have punctated designs. This looks like a dancing man with turkey feet. And then we also have a series of vessels that are very, as far as I know, unique to Wallace Ruins so far. And what they are is basically normal Mesa Verde type forms. So that's a typical Mesa Verde mug, and these are Mesa Verde bowls. The layouts of the designs are fine for Mesa Verde, double band, single band filled with framing lines on the outsides with little attaching little dingleberries in here. But they also have very, very Chacoan features. Chacoan hatching here. This band of design inside this bowl is just, that's not Mesa Verde at all. This is not a Mesa Verde style mug design. It's mineral paint. It's a very thin white chalky slip like we see on Chaco black and white. So basically we're looking at Mesa Verde style vessels made to look like Chaco pottery. So again, I don't think this is a coincidence that it's found here at this Great House. And when it's being reused, and I'll get to what I think it all means in a few minutes. But we also are finding either in the rooms, either more or less intact altars, or this one looks like it collapsed through the 2nd story roof of one of the rooms. And right here, you can just see this bullet-shaped sandstone piece. It's called a corn mother. They're a type of object it's used today on altars in some of the historic pueblos, modern pueblos. And again, the tablets, and we have tablets that have round red dots painted on them. This one was actually propped up against the wall with 2 manos and an axe. So it was standing vertically with a chamahilla nearby in one of the back rooms. So again, we're getting this incredible ritual, what to me, and I think to us, is clearly ritual assemblage of artifacts. Now, that doesn't mean other artifacts weren't ritual. Probably daily life artifacts were used in rituals just like we do, but in fact, and a lot more. But we are getting things that look specifically ritual. And this is one I wanted to get to as well, because now we're talking about we're talking about ancestor veneration. We're talking about looking at the past, revitalization movement. And you can read about that in that article called Pictures to Mugs. It was in the Kiva. It was republished in the Kiva in 2009. And the idea there is that I can't get into it too much. We don't have much time, but the idea is that things were falling apart after the collapse of Chaco. We had the Great Drought in the late 1100s. Things were falling apart all over the place. And when societies get into situations of stress, environmental, social, religious, political stress, and specifically if there's an outside threat, not necessarily a physical threat, but maybe a religious threat, they can reorganize themselves intentionally. And if you want to read about that, that's great. You want to ask questions, I'm happy to answer questions about it, but that's a very long lecture all by itself. But what it represents, we think here in this area, is that part of that revitalization is going back and looking at Chaco as an inspiration for symbolism. It's the good old days. It's the things from the past that are being resurrected. So we're talking about a reformulation of a Chacoan house society. Now, house society is a whole other concept that was really foreign to me. This is Cindy's work again. And it really seems to fit the evidence pretty well right now. But this was a real surprise that I'm showing on this slide. We had the rectangular kiva. It's very late. It's clearly 13th century. That's about all we can say about the date, other than being rectangular. It's probably post 1270. And look what we found. We found some of the normal features of a ventilator shaft, ventilator, a deflector, a fire pit, and some other floor features. And then we found this amazing sipapu complex. Now, sipapu being usually it's just a single hole in the floor. But what we had here is a complex, and you can see the map of it on the right, upper right here. I recorded 42 different features within this complex. Some of those features were used multiple times, like this one. So you can see it was cut and filled and cut and filled. And you can see this other one here that was cut and filled and then cut and filled, and it had actually taken out smaller features. And one of the other things that was really a surprise, and I have not seen anywhere else, are these little features. There were 4 of these, where at the surface they look just like an oval or an elliptical hole, but as excavated down, it's separated into 2 little holes, what we call a bifurcated hole like this. And all of a sudden, I mean, these were dug. These weren't made by pushing something in like a pajo stick or something. These were actually dug out. And they were so difficult for me to dig because they're tiny. And I have to dig them out with real fine tools. You can see an example here. All of a sudden, they reminded me of, guess what? Bifurcated basket effigies. Curious stuff. But here we have, as far as I know, and I've tried to track this down, I've talked to a lot of colleagues, nobody's seen this kind of a sipapu complex after the end of Pueblo 1. We've got things similar to this, similar things were found in some of the oversized pit houses in McPhee Village and the work down in the Dolores Archaeological Project. And Rich Wilshusen wrote a lot about these sipapu complexes. But there, as far as I know, there's not another one been found that dates in between this one and in the late 1200s and those in the late 800s. So is this a resurrection of some old religious ritual? That's what I'm thinking. Now, whether it relates to Chaco or not, it's another story. We don't see this in Chaco. So what is this what's going on here? So I'm going to get a little bit, we're running out of time. Everything always goes so fast. So what we are talking about, and again, this is mostly Cindy's work, reformulation of a Bonito House Society with ancestor veneration as an expression of a cultural revitalization movement. So her work and the dating of the mausoleum did not refute the revitalization movement hypothesis, but it helped us refine it. And it may be that this change in mortuary pattern is the beginning of this reformulation. And it's not until later that it becomes full blown with all these Chaco features and all this Chaco symbolism like we see at Pueblo Bonito. I'm sorry. As we see at San Canyon Pueblo, the D-shaped building being a representation of Pueblo Bonito, for instance. So again, Cindy made these arguments in her dissertation that we're not only talking about a revitalization movement that's using or borrowing or resurrecting Chacoan symbolism. We're talking about something very specific as a Pueblo Bonito House Society. she's been able to compare what we have at this part of Wallace Ruin, this west part of Wallace Ruin, to specifically to a part of Pueblo Bonito. So again, we look at Wallace Ruin, the Great House here. Something's clearly happening here around this western kiva. We haven't excavated this over here, but this showed up on the surface. We didn't need to excavate it to see a lot of this. It's not over on the east side. It's only around this west side. Everything's there. But remember, what's underneath this? This is where the original Great House was. So something's going on that people came back and reinvested in this place over and over and over again. And so this may be, and this, I don't know if Cindy go along with this. I tend to veer off a little bit in my ideas sometimes, but this may be the house that the House Society originated with, or it's a representation of the original house. And that's what a House Society is basically. It's a group of people that are affiliated that trace their ancestry to a house. And just real quickly to put it in a context that most of us might have at least a glimmer of, think of the houses in England, the medieval house of York or Lancaster, Tudor. Those are all houses, they're lineages. They became political divisions. They're lineages, but they're more. They're affiliations, and they trace ancestry back to a specific house. So this is where our research is going now, and where we're focusing our attention to investigate this. So this Kiva 32, this Western Kiva, right now we're in the process of doing that excavation. We go back to the very first slide here, and you can see what it was like at the end of last year. Or no, I'm sorry, at the end of this spring's excavation. These stairways are just so we can get in and out. That's ours. We're just now, and 2 days ago, we were working in there. The rain was coming, and we were starting to uncover burned beams. So I'm really excited about the possibility that this kiva was burned, and we can get actual construction dates for it. But another thing that you can't see in here that we're finding now is you can see some of these rocks in the middle. Of course, a lot of the walls had fallen inward, but there's a group of rocks in the middle that make an arc underneath this that comes around. It looks like it might have been a structure on the roof of the kiva, and the masonry, or at least the stones making up whatever that wall was, look like phase 4. So we got a phase 4 kiva here, 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 and possibly a phase 4 structure on top of the roof of this phase 3 Chaco kiva. So we're pretty excited where it's going. We've got another month of excavation this year, and then we're going to put it to bed for the winter, and really, go through all the paperwork and all the things that we need to do, write our report, annual report, and see what we can do, see where we go next. We're probably looking at just a few more years of excavation before we quit, and we'll leave all of this for somebody else. At the very end of this, I would like to make sure that we acknowledge that all of this work has been done by volunteers, and all over the years. So many colleagues and friends and people from outside. I just had colleagues from South America looking at it, and they were giving us their input, and all of these people have really made a huge difference in our work, and I want to make sure to thank them. This is just one session of people. A group of people were brought from Texas to help out. People who worked with myself at the Galt site, and Steve Howard here brought a group, and Dick Boisvert from New Hampshire. So we've got Texicans and hamsters here, as well as our local folks that have been with us for years. So I want to say very much thank you to them. And I think we can go to the question and answer now.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Bruce. And at least you can take a small breather before we get to the Q&A, which is starting to starting to pile up. So I'm just going to jump into some of the
All right.
questions from your well-known colleagues, I'm sure. Just wanted to point out there's a lot of participation in the webinar. So you don't know it, but you're actually speaking to about 150 people right now. So.
All right.
All right, so we've got some pretty specific questions since there's an awful lot of archaeologists here listening today. One question is, the two phase 3 kivas appear to be fully above ground. Are their floor elevations the same as the surrounding rooms, or are they sunk below grade to some extent?
The answer is pretty simple. We haven't excavated either of them, so we're not sure. I've estimated that where the kiva is, the western kiva that we see here, the floor should be about a meter below where we are now, if it's like the ones that we see in Chaco Canyon, which would make the floor a meter higher than the bottom of the early rooms. So the answer is they're elevated, and I don't see that they're going to go down through the original ground surface or even to the original ground surface.
Excellent. Well, as long as you're still on this slide, we had a question. How did the pathway to the stairway work after the phase 3B construction?
After phase B3, we're not exactly sure when they quit using this area. All we know is that this antechamber, this little room that is the stairwell, was filled during the early 1100s. So after that, it wouldn't have been visible, probably. So when they came back in the late 1100s, early 1200s, it's very unlikely that they could see it. Now, that doesn't mean they didn't know it was there. So when we first started the excavation of this, it was actually a big pile of stones on that corner. And I thought maybe there was a little tower there. Turned out to be a stairwell, not a tower. But the stones that were piled on top were phase 4 type stones. So it could have been an altar, it could have been a monument, but it was right on top of the stairwell. So I think it was still remembered. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Okay, no, great, thanks. Sort of a couple more sort of more specific archaeological questions, and then I'm going to move on to some big picture questions.
Okay.
Coming in. I think you kind of addressed this a little bit, talking about the Sipapu complex and some of the similarities to Rich's work. We have one question about the bifurcated Paho hole and accompanying artifacts. Someone asking, do they resonate with the bifurcated basket forms from basket maker sites?
Very possibly. We know we have the bifurcated baskets in Pueblo Bonito. I had an example up here someplace. And there's quite a bit of speculation of what they might have represented. Now, they actually have the baskets as well as the effigies. Ours are reduced to just the ends of ladle handles. So do they go back to the basket maker ones? Very possibly. Don't know. It's a good observation, and it's worth pursuing. We got a lot of things here that students could pursue, and we're completely open to the use of our data, our materials, whatever, for students and other researchers to work with. We've had many researchers work with samples from our site. There's dissertations, there's theses that have been done based on stuff that we've made available. So if there's people out there that want to pursue something, just contact us.
Okay. We had a question that came in early on in your presentation around if you have any information around the sourcing from the stone used in construction.
Okay, it's kind of, that gets into a really long story, but I'm going to make it very short. We were approached in the mid 80s by the Bureau of Reclamation, who was looking for a source for riprap. And they were trying to understand how durable the sandstone was in this area. And one of the ways some bright spark came up with the idea, well, if we look at stones from ruins, we know when those things were made and put on the surface, how have they eroded? And they came to me and said, you've got this pueblo that you're excavating with lots of stones. And we can see there's many different sources. We'd like to test them. So they took samples of all the stones that they thought were different from the site. And they went off and they tested them, came back. That's how we identified the phase 3A as Mancos sandstone. And they said, this would be great for riprap, but the source is too small. We can't use it. But out of that, this is again an example of how we're open to anybody wanting to do research. Out of that, we identified where that stone came from, and then it became apparent that it was the same as the sandstone at Pueblo Bonito and unique to this area, et cetera, et cetera. We don't know where all the sources of stone are. There's a lot of greenstone that we're not sure of. I mean, we know of greenstones in the general region, but we don't have specific sources. I don't know about a Haney. I know you've got the same range of sandstone, except they weren't using this Mancos sandstone as far as I can tell. And, talking to Kellum and stuff, and Steve, they don't see it at Haney, which is curious. And it seems like every phase they had a special stone. And I think it's part of their identity. I don't think it's just random. And even in the reuse of the structure after, in the 13th century, when they were rebuilding these kivas and stuff, they had enough stone there that they could have built anything they wanted with the stone that was there. But they brought in yet a new source of stone to add to the mix. So they were using all the previous stones, and then they were bringing in these great big chunks of Dakota sandstone and conglomerate that had to come from, I don't know, Dolores Canyon or something, just to add in. So I think the whole issue of what the stone is, where it came from, how it was used is very, very important to identity. So it's a very interesting question. Again, I'd love somebody to do a major study of it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so there's two more archaeological questions that I'm going to kind of mix together, and then we'll end on kind of a big picture question about the site. We had a question around the 4 house lineage kivas that you talked about. One of our listeners was interested in if there were evidence of, if you found or thought there was evidence of clan associations, if there were niches in the kivas, and then kind of additionally, another listener was interested in what you thought about the fact that only the western rooms were used for burial areas.
Yeah. Okay, the little kivas, some people call them clan kivas, some call them household kivas. They were pretty cleaned out. The features in them were pretty expectable. The little keyhole shaped kiva was really a classic, except it had a subfloor ventilator tunnel, which is, some people think is more of a Chacoan, but not only would it have subfloor, it had a floor level as well. So it had both floor level and subfloor. Most cases when that happens, people have interpreted as one replaced the other, but it was very clear that both of these were functional. So, and I had quite a few of the kivas at San Canyon Pueblo also had floor level and subfloor ventilators. So I don't see that as a specific Chaco trait. Clans, I don't know. These could be lineages that were part of the house society, because as I said, the house societies were not a single lineage. They could incorporate lots of lineages, like the house of Tudor. They married into all these different lineages and brought them in as part of a affiliation. But it's really clear that the 2 north ones are virtually identical, although one has a subfloor and floor level vent, and the other one's only a floor level vent. Just a few niches, nothing really outstanding that grabs me as being a particular area or affiliation. But clearly, why would you have 4 kivas clustered around a pre-existing Chaco kiva? and yeah, when we get to that, why the West? Well, don't know. Again, if it's a house society, that may be the western side of the kiva the Great House may be that house society, and another house society may have had the east side, and it was the west side house society that was being reinvigorated in the 13th century. These are all speculations. When we get to this kind of thing about what people were thinking and how they were organizing based on artifacts and architecture, it's, a lot of it's speculation, but it goes beyond what our basic data usually is, which tells us about economy, subsistence, settlement pattern, that sort of stuff. It's getting more deeply into social structure, and that's really exciting. Both Cindy and I are really finding this to be an exciting direction of research. And there are other people have been doing this kind of work. I mean, the House Society is not something Cindy made up. It's something she read about and then applied our evidence to that concept.
Excellent, thank you. Well, so as we're wrapping up, and I think this is a good wrap-up question, and I know that it's one that you've received before, but a number of your archaeological colleagues have asked about your communication and work with ancestral Pueblo groups and communities. Have you involved some Pueblo groups in your interpretation? There's been some observations from other archaeologists that it seems like it's unusual to continue with burial excavation these days, given that the contexts aren't threatened. So I was just wondering if you could speak to that, your relationships, and someone asked actually in the question, if Pueblo leaders asked you to stop excavating at Wallace, what would you do?
Oh, that's getting into a whole nother area, but that's okay. We're, like I say, our basic thing is transparency. We have not excavated a burial since 1985. We're not specifically looking for burials. We try to avoid burial, but we're not going to be able to investigate these sorts of questions if we just ignore the fact that people died. Our interaction with Pueblo peoples have been more on a personal level, not a governmental tribal organization level. We have invited many people, and many Pueblo people have come and visited the site and talked to us about our research and our what we're trying to accomplish. And there's probably as many opinions about it as there are in any other society. Some people think it's terrible that we're out there. Other people are really interested in what we're finding and what we're thinking about. Like I say, we're as open as we can be. We're not looking for burials. We're not trying to find that, but we're not ignoring the fact that they are there. They're a very important aspect of what we're trying to, or what we're finding out about potentials for social organization and use through time. And that's what really fascinates a lot of the Pueblo people we've talked to. They're not interested anymore in whether they ate corned beans and squash and whether or not they were there at a particular year or whether or not they moved from here to there. They're really interested in a lot of this. One of the statements that last year when we had somebody visit, I won't say anything more about it, but the statement was, we've got to bring our grandchildren here to see this. Okay. This is our story. This shows that our stories are true. That's a quote. Okay, so the way I'm not trying to rationalize what we do. We do archaeology. I do archaeology all over the world, and whatever the ancient culture or whatever, it's about the human experience, and we're open to speak with, show, talk with, whatever, anybody that wants to come. So we openly invite folks to come, Pueblo, anybody. And we listen, and we've had very close relationship with quite a few Pueblo people over the years who have come and visited. We've had some that wanted to come dig with us. So I guess that's the answer I would have for that.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. And I know that you don't shy away from all of the complex and sometimes uncomfortable questions, which is what happens in our field. And I'm really grateful for your presentation of the work, and for your honesty and transparency, and for sharing all of this incredible work with us. Thank you so much, Dr. Bradley. We want to be respectful of your time, but if you get a chance, lots of compliments in the chat, and thank yous for sharing this presentation. Thank you so much.
If people want to know more about our stuff and read about it, they can go to my webpage, primtech.net, and all of our annual reports, all of our publications, including access to Cindy's dissertation, they're all there and available.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you for the wonderful presentation. And it was very well attended too. So
thank you all for coming.
All right. We'll see you next week. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.